Okay, this is Gavin Mehl. We got Daniel Krawisz on today. Is it how do I say it? Is it Krawisz?
Yeah.
Krawisz? Okay. Daniel Krawisz on today we're going to talk everything Bitcoin and get to know Daniel a little bit better and about some of the theories that he has on money and some of the one of the terms he's well known for, which is hyperbitcoinization. So Daniel, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining on. And we really want to just get started by, learning about who is Daniel Krawisz.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's a pretty tough question. I don't think I've ever really talked about that before, but well, I have master's degrees in physics and software engineering, and my credentials in economics is that I passed the Rothbard graduate seminar at the Mises Institute. But I've been interested in economics for a long time. Lots of different subjects. I read into all kinds of different things, but I don't know who I am. Can we get that's that's my education, I guess.
Where do you come from?
I grew up in Wisconsin and Vermont when I was really little, and then I moved to Texas to go to graduate school.
All right. So that's your education, that's your background. It sounds like you've got these, you've already been well educated. Have you had a chosen profession?
Well, I was going to be a physics professor, but that didn't work out. And so just about then is when I discovered Bitcoin. So I decided to go into that because I think it's a lot more useful than any of the other, I don't know, tech things that are going on. I mean, I think all of the other technology is mostly really bad. So to me, Bitcoin is like something that's improving the world. And unfortunately, when I try to explain that to people, they all think I'm a scam artist because it's 99% scam artists around here.
You mean people who are associated with Bitcoin?
Well, okay, with the word Bitcoin, not with the correct definition of Bitcoin. Although there are scam artists in BSV, it's a much lower proportion of scam artists, I would say.
All right. So it sounds like would you consider yourself a scientist?
Well, I would say that people should apply scientific reasoning to their ordinary lives. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm a professional scientist, but I would say that science is not the scientific method is not the method that Austrian economists believe in. So I would say science, the scientific method is some knowledge, but not all knowledge.
Okay. So you could appreciate, sounds like you appreciate science, but there's also an economic background. You studied economics, sounds like, as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, as I said, I passed the Rothbard graduate seminar at the Mises Institute. But yeah, I've read a lot into Austrian economics. Austrian economics, that's the branch of economics that I think is the correct one. And the rest are kind of going off in the wrong directions in many ways. Very much like forks of Bitcoin. They're like things that are, well, they're kind of got ideas that are good for exploiting people, and that are not good for having a good society.
Okay, so it sounds like this Rothbard graduate program. I'm not familiar with it.
Rothbard. He's
Rothbard.
an important Austrian economist.
So with that, when someone passes that, what does that mean?
It means you understand Austrian economics.
Okay. All right. Cool. That helps. Sorry, as a novice. So that's okay. So we've got a little background. That's really important, Rhett. Thank you for sharing that. So that brings us over to, well, it sounds like how you found Bitcoin. I know you've shared that a little bit before, but it sounds like you met Ross Ulbricht back in, is that right?
Yeah, I went to an event called 3-Day Startup, and Ross Ulbrect was developing the Silk Road, and he gave us a presentation on it. But he didn't say that the point was to be an illegal drug market. He just talked about it as a market where people could buy and sell things online. But he couldn't really explain Bitcoin to me in a way that made it matter to me, because I was asking him things about Austrian economics and he didn't know them. So he didn't. So the first thing I would ask is, what is the supply like? Like, how much is there? So he didn't really know if there was a fixed supply or not. At least that's what I recall. It wasn't really an important conversation to me at the time. So so I don't quite remember it that well, but I'm pretty sure I tried to find out some Austrian economics things about it. So, well, and then of course, the next thing I would have said is, what about the regression theorem? And that isn't, I didn't have the answer to that one for a long time later. But Mises had an idea about how money develops out of a medium of exchange that was based on what Menger wrote. But basically his conclusion is that you can't, a good cannot become money without having some kind of value other than money. So if Bitcoin is just a token that can't be used for anything else, then how can we use it as money? But later on, when I heard about Bitcoin again and people were actually trading it, I still didn't know how it started. How it started getting a value, but since it does have a market value at that point, we would have to say that it could become money, even if we don't understand how it became valuable to begin with.
Okay, so that sounds like your early exposure to Bitcoin, and then later on you found that it had a valuable marketplace, like with Mount Gox. It sounds like there was a trading,
Right.
it was being traded on, and
Yeah.
then later on it sounds like you came to some sort of a conclusion that it not only could be used at money, but what was the conclusion that you came to?
Well, I concluded that it could become money, but I still didn't know how it satisfied the regression theorem. And what Mises said is that a good has to be valuable for some other purpose that's not money, in order for it to become money. And so I still think that's a pretty difficult question, but I think that well, now I think we can say that perhaps that value is pure speculation. So speculative value is value, and the fact that Bitcoin uses proof of work means that people can coordinate in their acquisition of it. In other words, you can know that other people are getting Bitcoin because of the proof of work. So that would be a reason for you to believe that it is a viable speculation. So the Austrians didn't know about the handicap principle, so Mises definitely didn't think about that possibility. But I would say that because we have this this honest signaling mechanism in Bitcoin, it seems like it kind of makes it seem like the regression theorem doesn't really mean as much as it originally sounded like it did.
Okay, so the theory, the regression theory, may not have as much applicable value to Bitcoin as you originally thought. Sounds like.
No, it applies to everything. But think that now, think that if we say that the original value of Bitcoin was pure speculation, then that kind of makes it that the regression theorem doesn't mean as much. Because I think what Mises was thinking was that a good that became money would have to be something like gold. So something that people would want to acquire for some other reason, for something that's not pure speculation. Because if would you try to acquire gold because you thought people would use it as money in the future? Like if we're talking 10,000 years ago, like would that occur to you? Like when before it happened, would you do that? Mises was saying you probably want the gold to begin with because because it's beautiful, and because you can well, they didn't have electronics back then, but because it's valued for other purposes, like as jewelry or something. But Bitcoin isn't like that. It's not like it has. It's not like it's good for anything else, you know.
Well, is that so? Because it seems like there's with the blockchain side of it, isn't the isn't it required to be part of it? You know, let's say the NFTs or what they're doing with BSV blockchain.
Well, yeah, but the Satoshis would have to have some kind of value in the first place in order to be able to use them to mint NFTs. Like if Bitcoin is worth zero, you can't use them to pay for transaction processing. So the value of Bitcoin has to come from somewhere else. You know, people have to start wanting to acquire those Satoshis first, and then you could use it to pay for a transaction.
Okay, so where are we? Where are we in that right now, as of in the scheme of things?
Well, Bitcoin clearly has value now. It has a market value. So, however it got to that point, it's okay now. It could become money.
Oh, so back to around. It sounds like around 2013, you really started becoming very interested in this and applying some of the economic theory to it. And then you were inspired to write an article coming up with a new concept called Hyperbitcoinization. Can you discuss that a little bit about how that applies to economics?
Yeah, sure. So we had an economics discussion group at the University of Texas at Austin, and I told all of my friends about Bitcoin over there in 2012, and so most of them got some. And we talked a lot about Austrian economics and Bitcoin, but we didn't really talk to anybody else for a while. And when we did, we realized that none of the other Bitcoiners know anything about Austrian economics. Whereas, I don't know, I kind of had this idea that nobody would be interested in Bitcoin unless they knew about Austrian economics. Because otherwise, why would they think that it would be good for anything, you know? Um, so I started a website called the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute with two of my friends who, unfortunately later on became, they got inducted into the BTC cult. So I had to leave that organization. And excuse me, there were already people who were trying to say that Satoshi isn't relevant anymore. So that was part of why we wanted to do that. And we archived all of his posts online so that people could read everything that he wrote. And I also did some blogging that was mostly on Austrian economics around then. But since then I've learned that was a pretty big mistake, because the main thing that people got out of these blog posts was that I was optimistic on Bitcoin. So they didn't care about why. They just cared about having some kind of they just cared about pumping it, you know. So anybody who was saying Bitcoin was good, they would just use that. They didn't care about any of the reasons for anything. So you know, so I had a bunch of fake friends, because the moment I started saying like things are not so good, then they weren't my friends anymore, and that was that. And so I've learned that there are very big psychological problems that that have to do with economics and talking to people about economics. So since then, I've been trying to understand what's going on with the psychology around economics. And I think, well, because I saw Bitcoin turning into a cult, and I was like, why are people doing this? I mean, why are they why are they risking so much? You know, why are they or why don't they see that they're risking so much? You know, so and of course, then we started having these splits, and that's when I started doing my videos. And the point of the videos was to try to connect to people who were not asleep, like people who were awake. And so it wasn't about economics anymore at that point. It was just about who's not going crazy, who has a free mind, you know.
Free mind. All right. So it sounds like now we're on to 2017, and then around 2017 you started. Was this you started making videos, with the Bitcoin Cash fork, or was it, when BSV came about? What was your...
Yeah, it was around the first split in 2017. That's when I started doing videos. And, I've realized that if people allow this split to happen, like they're all incompetent. Like anybody who would let a split happen just doesn't understand what's good at all. And yeah, I didn't think I could fully endorse either side of the split, although I certainly thought the Bitcoin Cash side had much bigger potential. But it wasn't too much later after that whether we got into the same problems with Bitcoin Cash that we got into with Bitcoin Core. And so we had to do another split. And so there you go. Here we are,
All right, so let's talk about the problems now. You mentioned there were some problems. Now that's where things get really confusing. So it looks like there's according to the recent book that Kurt and Brian Doherty had written, they had mentioned how not only do the miners have a duty to be honest miners, but the developers have a duty to follow the protocol that's set out. Is that where the problem started coming about? That developers...
Yes. Well, I mean, what people desire is immortality, and that comes at the cost of, well, basically people prefer to play zero-sum games over cooperative games, because the zero-sum game is the only one that offers them this idea of immortality. So so that's not literally immortality, but like if you want a job that you're never going to get fired from, if you want to be somebody who can never be replaced, you have to play very risky games. And people don't care. They don't care about the risk, because what they want is to believe that they can have this perfectly secure position, and they don't want something where they're on the wheel of fortune and they're constantly being thrown up and turned down again. Okay, so that's why somebody would want to be a dictator, and it's why somebody would want to destroy the Bitcoin economy in order to have a privileged position as the developer of the software. It's what the core developers, or what Bitcoin Cash developers do, that what they can do is they can use their superior knowledge of the system, and in particular the software, to make it difficult for other people to replace them. And so one thing they really don't want is for there to be big mining operations, because if there were, then there would be money to spend on software development that didn't have anything to do with them. So some miner could make an alternate version of the Bitcoin D software that had, worked however they want, that could process a lot more transactions. And we've still got that problem, because everything is still working off of what Nchain is producing. But things would be much better one day if we don't have if the miners develop their own software. But I mean, anyway, people don't want to be replaced. And this is also why people don't like capitalism, because they don't like the idea that all of their relationships can end outside of their control. So they don't care that they're going to be wealthier in capitalism on average, right? What they care about is having a secure position where they can't be replaced. And they don't care about actually having that. They care about the dream that they're going to have something like that. Whereas in capitalism, everything is being turned around constantly. Everything is being mixed together. And that's how Bitcoin is supposed to work. It's supposed to be something where the only thing that's secure is the rules of the system itself. So there shouldn't be some person or organization that is unassailable.
Looks like you just basically led us full circle. The way you've described that story is to where the rules are the only thing that's set in stone. And when you say the rules, are you referring to the white paper? And is that where you're directing us to?
Well, Bitcoin has a legal definition, but there's also rules to capitalism, right? And they're not written down anywhere. But things would be much better if we could stick to those rules too,
Okay. So, and it sounds like the problem came about when the developers went off to and followed, their own protocol, and they went against the original design, or the way it was supposed to, set out to be done. Is that?
Well, yeah. There was a split. The split happened later on, because they were doing this for a long time. There was replaced by fee, and there were other things. Oh, there was what was that called? Pay to script hash and all of this other stuff. So there were innovations from a lot earlier, and they may have seemed innocent at the time, but each one created a precedent that enabled people to go farther.
What was the line in the sand moment that said, this is it, we got to split? Do you remember?
Well, it was the SegWit agreement where they said they were going to increase the block size like 6 months later or something like that, and then they didn't do that. Historically, That's what happened. But, you know, some people say that Bitcoin Cash was a like controlled opposition because if there had been no Bitcoin Cash, then the miners might have done more to force a block size increase. Of course, with Bitcoin Cash, we did avoid SegWit and all of that stuff. So it's not all bad, but Bitcoin Cash brought in its own weird changes. There's a different signature algorithm, and that still hasn't been fixed. And some other weird things. Well, there was replay protection. I really didn't like that. I thought that was really bad.
What's replay protection?
That means that the same transaction will not be valid on both chains.
So
they added they changed what's that called? They changed the sig hash algorithm so that there's a new parameter called fork ID, and everything in Bitcoin Cash had to have fork ID turned on, and that changed the signature algorithm. So the hashes that get signed in Bitcoin Cash are different, and it meant that the same transactions are not valid on both chains. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, that's really bad. So if you're a miner, you would want your on all transactions to be valid on both chains, because then you get paid twice. So why wouldn't you want that? It's just it's just caving that. Well, that was caving into the Bitcoin core hegemony. It was just saying, we're just going to do our own thing and not interfere with what you're doing. But what they should have done is interfered with what they're doing, because it was all bad and evil and should have been opposed in some way.
okay, so it's possible that it's possible in theory that Bitcoin Cash was controlled opposition. That seems to be your possible reasoning.
Well, yeah. Well, I just said people say that. I mean,
people say that.
I don't know what was going on in closed doors behind all that stuff.
So 2018 end of it is all of a sudden these guys all come together, and then they believe there's a disagreement. Now, can you take me back into that period of time when that was all happening? 28 was it end of 2018, and Craig comes into the picture.
Right. So yeah. So they were going to do more stuff to change Bitcoin Cash. They wanted to change how the Merkle tree worked and add a different opcode that was going to do a signature check in the script. And of course, that's when I really started paying attention to Craig, because he'd explain why these are bad ideas. And I was just like, well, you shouldn't just like change things. I mean, shouldn't we get a chance to figure out how it works before you even turn it on? But he already knew that these things don't work. And so first of all, he had this explanation for how to check a signature in the script itself as it worked already, without adding a new opcode. And at first I didn't understand the point of that, because this script checking, this signature checking script would have been like 2 megabytes long. So why would you want to do that? But the point is that checking the script or checking the signature is a costly operation. So why wouldn't you pay more for it? It's several thousand times more than any of the other opcodes in Bitcoin, so it should cost more. And the other one was this different kind of Merkle tree that that Amory invented, and and also transaction ordering, because they wanted to say that all of the transactions in a block had to have a specific ordering, and that made things a lot worse. It made that means making big blocks is a lot more difficult, because you have to sort all of the transactions. And it also means that you don't have well, and that in turn means that you don't have zero conf. You don't have zero confirmation transactions as easily, because it means that the transaction isn't confirmed until it's in the block.
All right, so it's around 2018 now. It sounds like that you really started looking into listening to Craig Wright. Now, can you this would be a good time to say, who is Craig Wright exactly? And I'm not just asking for a one-word answer, but what have you learned about him?
Well, he's a very interesting person. In with him too much, because I sense that if I did, everything would end up being about what he wants to make, and then that would not make it as wouldn't make me as happy. But he is very intelligent, and he has lots of great ideas. I remember when he did his Future of Bitcoin talk in 2017, one of the things I noticed about that is he referenced both Bastiat and Claude Shannon. So, I mean, that's probably the first person I've ever seen who knew about both of those two people.
These economists?
No, Bastiat was an Austrian economist, and Claude Shannon was the inventor of information theory.
What's information theory?
It's about the mathematics of information. So if you've heard of information entropy, Claude Shannon came up with that. And he also wrote an important paper on cryptography that he connected to information theory. And he also, he showed that no matter how lossy a channel is, you can also always make the channel, you can always pass information through the channel reliably with a certain error rate, with a low enough error rate. You can never have a zero error rate, but you can make the error rate as low as you want.
All right, so it sounds like at this point, Craig Wright is a highly educated, intelligent man, knows a lot about economics, science, mathematics, in your opinion at that point. And
oh yeah, well, he also, I remember he did a talk on why the Lightning Network doesn't work, and he just said that routing was going to be an NP problem. And everybody said he was a scam artist because they didn't know what that meant. So that has to do with computational complexity theory. If you've heard of P equals NP, that's what that has to do with.
no,
But so he always says things where I'm just like, oh, now that makes sense. Now I get it. And then everybody else is like, he's a scam artist.
So it sounds like he speaks in a certain way where it doesn't necessarily make sense to the average person unless you've read or been educated in that particular subject matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't I mean, why not go and Google what he's talking about? It seems like they don't want to do that, because if you just Google NP complexity, then you know what he's saying.
Nice.
But it seems like they don't. It seems like, I mean, it's been very shocking how much they've been able to protect people from actually looking into his ideas.
All right. Well, this is really, so now we got this new thing called Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, right? This is the 2018. It starts at launch, and then I was informed just the other day. I didn't realize the importance of it, but apparently there was a Genesis upgrade in 2020, February 4th. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
What was that
that's
all
when
about?
they made the numbers in Bitcoin. You'd have arbitrarily big numbers again, which is how it originally was, but Bitcoin core devs made it so you could only have 32-bit numbers. And what else? There was a bunch of things that they got working again. Well, they got rid of a lot of the limits, and they enabled a lot of the opcodes again. So like I think the branching, like op if and stuff like that. I don't remember exactly what they turned on, but it's a bunch of stuff.
All right. There's like a back to Genesis. So now, all right, we really haven't talked enough about your theory on economics, with Bitcoin and what you really meant by hyperbitcoinization. And we kind of glossed over that. So I really want to go back into that a little bit more. And I mean, this is are we in a hyperinflationary period right now economically in the United States, or are we years out from that? Have you evaluated this?
Okay, well, that's hard to say. So let me tell you one thing about the difference between Austrian economics and mainstream neoclassical economics is that in neoclassical economics, people believe that they will one day be able to predict these kinds of things. And so they have this, it's all based on the idea that economics is based on measurable things, like in science. So people have this idea that there's going to be a measure of value. That's really where the big difference begins. Because if you could measure value, then you could make some kind of simulation that would model how value is changing over time. But in Austrian economics, we don't believe that. So if you're going to ask me, like, is hyperinflation coming? That is not a question that I can answer as an economist. That is a question that I could answer as a speculator. Okay, that is speculator informed by economics, but not just economics, but also just my sense of the world. From what I know about what's going on, which is not necessarily perfect information, which doesn't exist. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not willing to bet money on whether we're going to have hyperinflation in the USA soon. I don't know what's going to happen, but I mean, it doesn't seem like anything is turning around. I mean, it seems like it's like a train crash that's they're not slowing down. They're not putting on the brakes or anything. So
All right, so
gonna get off the tracks eventually.
And when they get off the tracks, is that what your blog talked about with hyperbitcoinization? Is that where something like hyperbitcoinization happens, or is it before that? What is?
Yeah, well, if yeah. So there's this tendency with money to use just one, right? Because the best money is the one that everybody else uses. So when people talk about competing currencies, that doesn't mean that there's going to be some state or some sustainable situation where there's going to be different monies that are all roughly equal to one another. Competing currencies means that you have the opportunity to start a new one, but I mean, most likely people won't be interested in it because there's going to be one that's like a natural monopoly. There's going to be one that everybody uses. But if that the established money, the medium of exchange that everybody uses, if that one starts to fail, then definite opportunity for something else to come up. And it's not necessarily some kind of money that is endorsed by the government or anything. fact, it's a lot better if it isn't. Or it's a lot better if it's not something they're trying to create anyway. The government were to endorse gold or something, that'd be really good, or BSV, that'd be even better. But it can happen in opposition to what the government wants, because the process that that leads to money is not it's a crowd process. It's what happens when everybody is just acting on his own authority, you know. So but anyway, a hyper-Bitcoinization that's kind of a theoretical idea. So, you know, if you look at my original blog post on that, I just said we should think about it. We should try to imagine it. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I wanted people to think about where we could go with Bitcoin. Like, to me, like, there was not a, you know, people weren't talking enough about how big this thing could get. But the big problem with writing that blog post is that then the idea of hyper-Bitcoinization was just used to pump things that are not good for anything. So, you know, I didn't want to just provide a destination. What I wanted was for people to think about how we could get there. And so in my mind, I had a lot more stuff that I wanted to write eventually while this was all going on. But, you know, I thought people would want to understand economics. You know, I thought people would think that if they're going to win with this Bitcoin, they would have to strategize. And economics is like the strategy. But instead, that's not what we've seen. I think we've only seen, well, for most people, we've seen psychological processes that are opposed to strategy. And so, so maybe one day I hope we will be able to get over these, and people will not be able to lie to themselves so easily anymore. But I haven't made much progress on that front.
All right. Well, it looks like you're the idea of proof of work of ending scams, you know, could be a solution. Is that your theory?
Yes. Well, yeah, the handicap principle is another idea that I had learned about some time ago, which I recognized as an important idea. And yeah, I've been trying to explain that to people ever since. But the handicap principle implies that the only signal that you can make that is going to be sexy to the opposite sex is one that is harmful to you. So, and so that's kind of been the problem with trying to implement it, trying to get people interested in it, is they don't want to harm themselves. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what's made it a non-starter. So if I say like, you know, if you were, let's say we were talking, we're talking about how the next stage of human evolution, and we were trying to talk about like what we should evolve next. And we were like, you know, if we all hurt each other, if we all hurt ourselves to create a costly signal, that means that all the men who have a genetic load will have a lot more trouble reproducing. So then the next generation is going to be a lot better. So the problem with that is it seems like very few people that I've spoken to feel like they are the people who would benefit from that kind of thing. In other words, it seems like people are dominated by the fear of having inferior DNA, and there aren't very many people who truly act like they think they have better DNA. You see what I mean? Because if we were all saying, let's all grow antlers, the people who lose out of that are the men with inferior DNA. And then all the men with good DNA, then they're going to win out of that. So, well, there's been this resurgence of racism online recently. So I've talked to some people about that, and they're all like, white people shouldn't marry black people. And I'm like, well, I mean, if you really think your DNA is good at spreading, you'd want to get it into these other races, because that's where it's going to spread the most. If you think your DNA is competitive, then if you actually thought you had better DNA, then it's better off in close competition with the bad DNA from the other races.
No,
and that
all
means
right,
put
Daniel,
them together, But so, okay, well, I'm just saying that these online races they don't think that way. They don't really think that they have better DNA. So I'm looking for people who believe that they are the top men, and they believe it enough that they want to hurt themselves.
So take me now into that, like, where there's got to be a connection here between maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum. Isn't Bitcoin a proof of work network and then Ethereum is not? Is that a good example?
Well, yeah, Ethereum used to do proof of work, and then they transitioned to proof of stake. I don't know the history of Ethereum as well as Bitcoin, though, because I always thought that system was completely crazy. But yeah, proof of stake is a superficially similar idea to proof of work, but it is not a real handicap, because there isn't a genuine cost to it. And the best explanation as to why it doesn't work is from Paul Stortz, and you should read his blog post on that. But he has this idea about, he compares proof of stake to being like a TV show. Guys, I just don't remember how he explained it. Just read it. Look up his blog post on it.
Well, isn't it like where you're putting a bunch of money into a you're putting a bunch of money you're into an investment, and then hoping to get that money back, while everybody else is buying it at the same. It sounds kind of like a pyramid in a way.
Well, it just has to do with processing the transactions. So in Bitcoin, if you have more ASIC machines and you can do more hash operations, then you're more likely to solve a block. Whereas with proof of stake, it has to do with coins that you lock up for a certain amount of time, and or not necessarily lock them, but you stake them, and that just means they haven't moved for a long time. I mean, there's different versions of the idea, but you process the transaction and you compete over staking coins. So you get the block if you stake the most coins on average, instead of if you do the most work. And the proof of stake idea doesn't work, and the Pulse blog post doesn't work. It's not just about what it is, but it's about why it doesn't work. And
why doesn't it work?
Well, I was trying to remember it, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
But you should read his blog post. But ultimately, the reason is that there is no cost to it, because you can have alternate candidate.
There's no handicapped, basically. Back to the handicap theory.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can have different candidate blocks, you can have the same coins staked into them. Because those coins, they don't exist in real life. They exist in our shared consciousness, right? So before a new block exists, you can have lots of candidate blocks. And that's basically the point of what Paul Stortz was saying. Oh, and ultimately it does go back to proof of work if you try this strategy, because you need computing resources to produce all of these different candidate blocks. So proof of stake ultimately it's proof of work with more steps is what it leads to. If you take it to its logical conclusion.
So where does that take us now with let's make a I want you to make your case on the future of money. Like, let's say that we come into this hyperinflationary period, which I'm not saying that, you didn't claim that we are, but let's just say that happens and that people are forced to pick a different type of money. Can you make a case? Is there a perfect money out there right now that you can make a case for?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I would say that people should use BitcoinSV. That would be the best. But I've seen that we can't assume people will make rational decisions.
Well,
here's what'll happen. I mean, let's talk about what money is. I mean, according to Mises, and it's not just like he said that. I'm just skipping the logic. You should read his book to figure out why he believes this. But his conclusion is that the economic function of money is beyond being a medium of exchange. It is a shared concept of efficiency. Okay, so because value is subjective, we all have different ideas. Every person is a different concept of efficiency because they're different things that we like. So how is labor being used efficiently? Everybody's going to have a different idea about that because they're going to want different things to be produced. But when we have money, then we have a shared concept of efficiency because we have profit and losses. So the profit and loss system is about a shared concept of efficiency, according to Mises. So if you earn a profit, that means you're making things more efficient. And if you earn a loss, then you're making things less efficient. So if you have a bad money, that just means that people will not be very good at making each other more efficient. Okay, so what do we want? What's a good economy is one where you don't work very hard and you get a lot out of it. So that's what we can have if we have good money and capitalism and we have intelligent, wise entrepreneurs. So right now we don't have any of those things, but if we did, things would be really, really good. And everybody could be really lazy and still be really wealthy.
And now you mentioned that, Bitcoin sounds like, does Bitcoin SV solve this problem?
Well, it solves the problem of a bad money. I mean, Bitcoin SV is really like the best kind of money. I mean, let's just say Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin is like, it's the best kind of money. There was big problems with gold. So gold is really good in some ways, but it doesn't work over long distances. And of course, it can be stolen. And Bitcoin fixes both of these things. So what people used to do is they would use money substitutes. They would use banknotes or
Yeah.
checks. Yeah. So these systems, these banknotes, they depend on the integrity of the banking system.
Yeah, and if they may not have the bank there, what if they don't have the bank when you go there?
Well, the integrity has been definitely lost since the 19th century because there was this ruling where they said that the bank doesn't need 100% reserves. Just because money is not fungible, or because money is fungible, they said that that a claim on the bank is good as long as the bank has more than that particular claim, as opposed to having enough to satisfy all claims, which doesn't really make sense because it is possible for all claims on the bank to be executed at the same time for people to demand delivery at the same time.
Like Silicon Valley Bank, isn't that what happened over there? They all wanted to get
like a bank run. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people have this idea now, and this is called free banking. They have this idea that the banking system regulates the supply of money, and that a true free market is one in which banks are allowed to inflate the supply of money, which is what they do when they issue loans with money that the people have put in the bank. But there's an inherent conflict between the idea that you can demand delivery at any time and that you can earn interest on the money that you put in the bank. And so, people have been trying to square the circle for hundreds of years now, and it's never going to work. There's just going to be these intermittent failures. I don't know. Maybe someday people will figure that out, but it just seems like we're just stuck with bad ideas that never go away. Of course, I think if we started doing proof of work on our thinking, then they would go away. But people don't want to hurt themselves, so that's not going to happen.
Well, it sounds like people could get involved in mining, and that could be a if they were involved in mining, they could be a part of the proof of work concept. I mean, I'm trying to help make the case for Bitcoin.
Well, so you don't need banknotes. I kind of went off on a tangent, but that was kind of the point of what I was saying. With Bitcoin, you don't need banknotes because you could transfer them directly, and they're very good against theft because it's relatively easy to prove that a transaction is invalid if you keep the right information.
The miner can get involved in that and show that it was an invalid transaction by being an honest miner.
Well, no, you can show that because you can keep the information. Like if you have receipts and things.
The ledger will be your receipt.
Well, you would compare the information in the ledger to the private information that you're storing on your own. Because Craig Wright's idea is that the ledger itself should be basically meaningless on its own, so that you don't understand what's happening at all. But then when you bring in outside information and compare it to the ledger, then it becomes meaningful. So that's how you can check if a transaction is theft or not, because there will be receipts that go along with the valid transactions, whereas depending on how the theft happened, could be that there will not be a signed receipt going on with the theft transaction. If the hacker just completely gets your computer and has everything, has totally under his control, then he could make the transaction however he wanted. But of course, then we have the problem of hacking into lots of different computers individually, as opposed to hacking into one giant system that stores everything, that's the problem we have now, which is a lot easier.
So I want
to ask. That's a point made by Craig Wright.
It seems like he's dealing with a lot of that now, and I want to ask you about, if you see any problems, intrinsic problems with Bitcoin Satoshi vision, with what intrinsic problems in the technology, people, risks, or is it very well? Where are we right now with that particular Bitcoin? Is it?
Oh, well, I think BSV is going good. I wish it was going a lot better, but I guess I would say I just wish there were more entrepreneurs who I've been having a lot of trouble finding people that I can work with on things. So I don't know. I guess I wish people would want to learn more about how it works, so that they could start doing things with it. I've been telling a lot of my friends to learn to program for a long time, and so far haven't got too much success with that. Although both of my Nakamoto Institute friends learned to program, but then their minds became corrupted, so they're not helpful.
So, if an entrepreneur watched this video, what could their It sounds like you believe there's a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs on Bitcoin right now in building businesses. Can you talk a little bit about what you see, you know, how you could describe that and well, you make a case for it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess uh, I would say that seemingly entrepreneurs do not understand the economy as a whole very well. So the entrepreneurs, excuse me, that we've had up to this point. So Bitcoin is more like a holistic system. So if you're an entrepreneur, you should be thinking about what what is the whole thing going to be like? Um, because right now there aren't very many users of BSV, so it doesn't really make sense to just start something with the idea that you're going to make a lot of money off of the users that currently exist. So I think you would have to have some idea about how the economy is going to grow and how how people are going to be um, become part of the system.
And you
And
know, one of
so
the one of the developers, Xiaowei Lu, he's talked to me about how, you know, it really it's one app away. Like it's one good idea away. And it seems like there's that one missing good idea that just clicks. I mean, can you maybe think about like some really real needs or if an entrepreneur watches this, throw some gems on possible ideas for problems people could solve?
well, I kind of disagree with that idea. I mean, I don't think that it really works to try to get people into Bitcoin. Um, so I think it's a really big mistake to think of Bitcoin users like how traditionally, if you're a business, you think about your users. Bitcoin users are not going to be like consumers. Okay, right? If you start a business today, or the way people do it now, the whole idea is that the users of the business are going to be passive.
Consumers.
Yeah, they're going to be consumers. And so what I think, what I would like is for people to think about providing services to the people who are already here in Bitcoin as a community of entrepreneurs. So, um, so I mean, the thing about making money is you have to get it from people who already have it. So I know that everybody would be really happy if we suddenly got 1 million Bitcoin users, but at the moment, those people do not have any Bitcoins. So if you're trying to think about profit and losses in Bitcoin, the only way that you're going to get a profit is off of the people who already have Bitcoin. See what I mean? So I would say if you're thinking about products, you need to think about the users that currently exist. And to me, what's going to attract people into Bitcoin is a better economy as a whole. In other words, I don't think you're going to make an app that's going to attract 1 million people into Bitcoin, because there's so much hassle getting the Bitcoin. Okay. Um, and so you could have an app that has 1 million users, but those users are not going to be Bitcoin users. That's another thing that could happen. So like you could say that Bitcoin is working behind the scenes and it's like plumbing or something. But then none of those 1 million users of that app are going to be Bitcoin users. And they're not going to be people who are making money for anybody else. You know what I mean? It's only if more people become Bitcoin users that everybody gets wealthy at the same time. And so what's going to drive those people to become Bitcoin users, to me, is the idea that they're going from a shrinking economy to a growing economy. It's not like there's just going to be one app that's going to make them think the economy is growing. So to me, Bitcoiners need to think about how to make each other more efficient, and that's what's going to attract people in.
Have you thought about like some of the ways that we could become more efficient, and things that the community could provide, like people who are using Bitcoin now, like real needs, problems that need to be solved?
Well, I mean, I think that the best way to um, to eliminate costs is to find mistakes at an earlier stage of production. So that was kind of the point of why I wanted to do this this proof of work upvote system, because then people would be able to eliminate more mistakes at an earlier stage. So to me, that would be a lot more useful than just about anything else that anybody could build on Bitcoin.
And how does that work?
Well, it just means that you don't get to talk unless you do proof of work. It just means, so instead of just having a like button that costs you nothing to press it, like in a democracy or something, you pay to do proof of work, and then that's like you've liked the post, and you can choose how much you want, and everybody can verify that all of these likes or upvotes happened, because they would all be on chain and they would all be verifiable. Whereas like with something on Reddit or X, you do not know that the number of likes or upvotes that you see displayed are actually real people or bots, or that the system itself just added them in behind the scenes, or that there's some kind of centralized manipulation. So none of those numbers mean anything. If we use proof of work for upvotes, then all of those upvotes would mean something. And we would have, well, just remember how I was saying, like all of, if we grew antlers, and all of the males that have genetic load, they would not get children as much. You know what I mean? So that's what would happen to our ideas, is all the dumb ideas would die out a lot faster. And so that would be, I don't know, there wasn't anything that you could do that would be better than that, but when I tried to make it, I haven't been able to make a partnership with somebody who can actually make it happen. I mean, so far I've made like demo versions of the idea that don't work very well, and also just kind of explaining it to people they don't really get it. You know what I mean? So to me, like what I've been talking about is just way more useful than anything else could possibly be, but you haven't been able to get people on board with it, But so I think another thing that would be good, would be a market for services. So something where people can find programmers making posts and making offers and saying what they want, something like that. That would be pretty useful. So I think, but so far I don't know how many good programmers there actually are in BSV. I mean, it seems like you have to go outside for them right now.
Interesting. All right. So it sounds like these are a couple of ideas that you could use proof of work on, creating a marketplace for services, and then the other one is like about maybe like a social network or an upvote system where you invest money. You're paying to post. And I've heard of concepts like that already. I've heard of people doing.
Well, Twitch just pay to post. I'm talking about pay to upvote, and the upvote is cryptographically verifiable. So it's not just a payment; it's a proof of work. So you get a hash that has leading zeros.
Okay. And what about Have you heard of HODLocker before?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's based on my idea, but it's about locking coins instead of doing proof of work. And so, um, right, I mean, right now, the version that exists has, well, so first of all, I don't think locking coins is a real cost. So last time I checked HODLocker, it was all just posts about how BSV is going to the moon. And, the problem with that is you wouldn't lock coins if you didn't think BSV was going up. If you thought BSV was going up, then there wouldn't really be any cost to locking coins if you were correct. So you would think that there's always going to be a bias with a locking coin system to say that the BSV is going up. So to me, that that kind of shows how it doesn't work as well. And it also has this, well, I don't want to go into the details on it, but you can't unlock your coins without putting in your whole Relay X seed. And that has to do with the way that the Relay X wallet works, I think. So they would need to switch over to, or they would need to enable it to work with like hand cash or something to fix that. But yeah, HODLocker is that's based on the idea of a cost, but it is more like the proof of stake version of it to me.
Got it.
But people have been very excited about it, and so that makes me feel good. But I don't think it's something that will actually work that well.
So it sounds like there's still something missing here between Twetch and HODLocker and everything that's going on right now. There's just that. We haven't put it together yet. It sounds like it's in your head, but we haven't put the right team together yet.
Well, yeah. Well, I've had a big problem with teams. So far, I've worked with people who are either just starting with programming, who are good people other than that, or I've had people who are good at programming but have very serious personality disorders. So,
let me ask you this: have you considered the onboard? How to solve the onboarding problem? Or is there a solution to that?
The onboarding problem is just a problem of growing the economy. So if the economy grows, people will want to buy Bitcoin. I mean, if people think that it's a good idea to have Bitcoin, then they're going to go through hoops to get it. They're going to sign up on an exchange and do KYC and everything like that. But the problem is that if they don't think it's worth it, then it's not really worth it to go through all of that stuff. So I would say the solution to the onboarding problem is to grow our own economy. So we should make each other really efficient, so that somebody who doesn't have Bitcoin is going to look at people who do have Bitcoin and be like, oh, that guy looks like he's doing really well in comparison. To me, that's what solves the onboarding problem.
I see. The incentive.
Yeah.
The incentive solves the onboarding problem. If there's enough incentive, people are going to go through all of the hoops to get in, even though it's hard to find, even though it's hard to get, right? Doesn't really matter how hard it is. They'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really good. All right. So we're can we, if we kind of like begin to wrap up here, where do you think we're going with this, with Bitcoin? I mean, ultimately you kind of already talked about what do you think is lacking. So where do you think we're going? I mean, did you want to bring any comments on what's going to potentially happening with this, the effect of this case coming up? I mean, is there a potential flippening that could happen with Bitcoin and Bitcoin, BSV and BTC? I mean, is that a possibility? And is that hyper-Bitcoinization, or, how does that relate to your theory of hyper-Bitcoinization, the flipping?
Well, if the price goes up a lot, that doesn't mean it's hyper-Bitcoinization. I mean, I would say that BTC is not even competition to BSV, really. I mean, it's not really something you can use as money, and you can't do all of the other stuff, excuse me, that you can with BSV on it, at least not with low fees. So flippening that, I wouldn't see it as like a monetary phenomenon. I would see it as a change in people's ideas about what's likely to succeed. And certainly the outcome of this court case potentially could make really big differences in the price. I don't really have a specific idea on how that'll work. And I don't really know, I don't really have a good idea about how the court case is going. And to me, it seems like the information that people are reporting is all totally biased. So I just don't really know.
It's very hard to get the right information out there without opinions.
Yeah, or without deliberate misrepresentation. You know? But it seems like in order to lose the case, in order for Craig Wright to lose the case, Copa would have to prove that he is not Satoshi Nakamoto, which is not very easy. But the judge is also going to rule on whether Craig Wright has proved that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. So that also may not be easy. At least, so far I haven't really seen anything that seems like it is going to be easy for him. There's lots of documents, but I don't. some people say that they're all fake, and some people say that they're all good. So I don't know. I don't know how to tell, or at least some of them are good. I don't know what's going to happen. But to me, it seems like it's going to be difficult to prove that he is not Satoshi Nakamoto, but I'm not sure how likely it is that he will convince the judge that he has proved that he's Satoshi Nakamoto.
All right. So, what about the other perspective of the miners? I mean, have you looked at all about the profitability of mining BSV versus BTC?
Well, so for a long time, I mean, that just, that's kind of a weird number. I mean, for a long time, BSV was less profitable than BTC, but that just indicated that there was more investment into BSV, which just makes sense. And I think recently there was a flippening as far as profitability goes. So that means that more people are probably going to start mining BSV. And I don't know if those guys are really going to help a lot, but hopefully they'll be good citizens who don't try to destroy everything. But at this point, I'm not so sure what's going to happen.
So do the miners, I guess, could the miners affect the outcome of which chain becomes the dominant chain? Do the miners have that sort of authority?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, there's certainly tricks they could use. I don't know if you'd call that authority, but I mean, but Craig Wright has talked about some things like this. So like one thing is that the miners are free to spend the SegWit coins, which are, according to the old rules, are anyone can spend. So you would have a legal argument as to whether SegWit legally changed the rules of BTC so that they're no longer anyone can spend, but it seems like it would be difficult to argue that because the the whole point of SegWit is that it's a soft fork. So that means that you don't need to upgrade. So maybe the miners could say, we didn't know that they weren't anyone can spend, you know, or something like that.
As a miner, do you talked about this earlier, but you know, can you clarify as a miner, do you only get the chain that you mine, or do you get other chains as well when you mine?
Well, there's some altcoins that do merge mining, and that means that proof of work from other chains can be used and is acceptable to mine blocks on the altcoins chain at the same time, but that isn't used in the Bitcoin chains, so you can't. You know, each block header is different for the three chains, so you can switch between the different chains. You can set ASICs to, you know, you can set how your ASICs are mining. So half of your ASICs could be on BTC, and then half could be on something else. But you can't use one ASIC for two different coins, two different of the you know, the Bitcoin forks at the same time.
Now, is there an argument for so there's a okay, well, people have different opinions on this, and I want to get maybe your perspective. Now, they say that that Bitcoin Cash forked from BTC and then BSV forked from Bitcoin Cash. Then I've also heard that BSV never forked. It's been there the entire time, and then BTC forked off to a different protocol along with Bitcoin Cash that forked off to a different protocol. So what is your perspective on, you know, like, because aren't they all on the same thing since 2009? You know, since the original Genesis block, do they all lead back to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a legal argument. So if you look up how a corporation can split and how that's treated in tax law, there's different things. Now I don't remember what they're called, but if you if you split up a corporation, that would indicate that there would have to be some kind of board of directors that would be able to make that kind of decision, because otherwise, how could it happen? And if there is, then the shares of that corporation would have to be an investment contract according to the SEC. So legally, the only, you know, part of Bitcoin not being an investment contract is that the fact that the rules can't change. That's necessary if you don't have a board of directors. See what I mean? Like if there isn't anybody controlling it, then the rules can't change, because if they changed, then somebody did that. You know, it took somebody's action. There is somebody in control. So if the argument can be made successfully that BSV is not an investment contract, then something that goes along with that is that there can't be splits. You would have to argue that any protocol changes were attacks that are not legal, and so fixing them was okay because we had to recover from the attacks, but that the protocol changes were not supposed to happen. and that the other chains are not splits, but airdrops. So then, and it's kind of like you're kind of forced to make that legal argument, just based on the way the coins work. So we can't have splits in Bitcoin, and or else it's an investment contract.
All right. So sounds like the idea of hard forks isn't really a proper, it seems like isn't really a proper analysis. It looks like it would be more like potentially the argument could be, well, if someone were to make the argument that Bitcoin has been going on the entire time, and then it was attacked at a couple of different points, and those attacks had to be recovered from. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, if you can't successfully make that argument, then we're in a lot of trouble. And I mean, that actually means that the other chains are investment contracts, because they are because they're airdrops, which means that somebody has this implied incentive to increase the value of the coin, you know?
The other sides are potentially airdrops and investment contracts, and arguably the only one that is not is the original Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, I think that there were some other altcoins where they just copied Bitcoin so much they were, they worked exactly the same way. So I don't know if you could really say that literally every single other coin is an investment contract, but certainly people haven't been worried. They haven't been worrying about that issue, so they haven't cared if they didn't do it right.
All right. Well, we can, would you be against doing another, coming back on again, let's say in a month from now, we could do like a kind of a feedback. Cause I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions. We'll cover on this, and we can discuss, this concept a little further. And, I really, we could kind of bring forward push your idea forward. I mean, I really think that your theory of Hyperbitcoinization could become a reality, in the near future, if people understand it more.
Oh yeah, well, wouldn't that be nice? But yeah, well, okay, well, let me just go into a little more on that. I mean, if you think of each money as like a team, okay, because if you're using the same money as somebody else, then it's like you're playing a cooperative game with them. And if you're using a different money, then it's a competitive zero-sum game, because one money wins out eventually. And so we should think of Bitcoin as being like a team, and so we need to think about how to be better as a team, and that's about making each other more efficient. I guess I already went over all that, but yeah, I mean, I think people think that way already, but I don't know. I would like to take the idea a lot farther.
Yeah, Bitcoin as a team, where we're all on the same team together, and we're going in one direction.
Yeah,
and
it's the direction is world domination.
World domination, money for the world, a sovereign money, like it's a sovereign money. I mean, that's the, if I could just pipe in on that here, that's the case that seems like, it without the central point of control, without the Federal Reserve Bank potentially behind it, or what do they call the CBDC coin? You've got Bitcoin, you've got this like unicorn, right? You've got this sovereign money that if you have that, you can, I'm saying in the future, if you're holding Bitcoin, like, you're free, man. You can transact. You don't need anything else, right? I mean, that seems to be a bright future of hope.
Yeah. That would be nice.
I mean, that's why I want to make the case that like everybody should just get one Bitcoin Satoshi vision, just one. because if everybody had one, more people that have one, the bigger this economy can be, and we can all work together. And then one day, I think we'll transact potentially. And could we potentially just be transacting in Satoshis?
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be a lot better. I mean, you know, there's a need for the miners to be profitable. So there's a need to, there's a need for lots of people to make transactions that's independent of, you know, trying to be global money. So any kind of product, excuse me, that Bitcoin can offer people is good. So tokens on chain. So you know, government can issue money on chain, and that's a way that miners can make revenue. That's successful. That's very good, and that's critical for Bitcoin success. But yeah, ultimately, I would say, why would anyone want to use that CBDC if they could just use the Satoshis? I mean, that's really going to be a lot better. I mean, you would really, you know, if the government is going to be Bitcoin's customer, then it's hard to say bad things about it. But like if people really prefer those CBDCs, then they're being abused. They're going along with abuse from the government, because those things aren't going to be very good for them. They're going to be things that make it easy for the government to exploit people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with Bitcoin, people can actually take control of their own money, their own decision. Nobody can just go out and take money out of their account or you know, withdraw things without their permission.
Yeah.
Or even monitor their money, you know, without a court order. So,
Right.
what you know, in closing, what exactly does that sentence over your head mean?
This is from The Little Prince, and it says, one does not see well except with the heart. The essential is invisible to the eyes.
One does not
So
see well except from by the heart.
Yeah.
From The Little Prince.
Yeah. Yeah. See, there's the Little Prince, and that's about. So yeah, the Little Prince has an idea that's kind of like a proof of work. It's not quite all the way there, but it's kind of close. Because what they say is that uh, beauty conceals truth. So the reason the stars are beautiful for the prince is that his home is out there, and the reason the desert is beautiful is that there's water somewhere hidden in it. So truth is not the same as beauty, but beauty points you towards the truth. Of course, he didn't have the idea of a costly signal, because that's the reason that it points you to the truth. But it's kind of good. It's kind of getting there, I think.
Beauty points you to the truth.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a good place to end, Daniel. I really appreciate you coming on. I'll get this out here today, and I look forward to doing another talk with you here in the near future. Are you ever going to be going to one of these in-person events again, or like a meetup? I mean, you know, what state are you? Are you ever in California, or where are you?
I'm not, well, I don't want to know where I am
You
now.
have to tell me where you're at, but what about going into California? I was thinking about doing a meetup here in San Francisco. You know, I've been talking with Xiaowei about doing that, and you know, we should do something in person. You know.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't really like traveling, and I've been really screwed up ever since COVID-19 started, but I'm finally getting some stability back. So yeah, I might consider going somewhere. I'd like to go somewhere nice. To me, the USA is still a really terrifying place, but yeah, I mean, I still have to go back there sometimes. Um, but but yeah, it was really nice to talk to you, Gavin, and yeah, this was an interesting discussion, and I'd be happy to come back again some other time.
I love it. Thank you, Daniel. It was nice talking with you as well. I'll go ahead and end the recording there.